Okay, let's continue on the most boring hobby on the planet, watching somebody code. And this time, though, suppose that your company's software, for whatever reason, maybe it needs encryption seeds, or maybe it needs some kind of randomization structure. It needs huge numbers of arrays, and the specifications for those arrays are they can only be even numbers, and they've got to be within a certain range. And now for testing, let's use this range just to make it simple. And then for realsies, we'll go up to 100,000. Okay, pretty straightforward. The problem, though, is how do we generate only even random numbers? Okay, well, let's go and start to get some code together. Now, let's say that the requirement is that we need, and we'll just do this for testing, okay? But let's determine a size. This is a size for the array. And for testing, let's just say 10. It doesn't matter. When we go production on this, it'll be a much larger number. So here's what we're faced with. We need to create an array of size 10 with only even numbers, and then they're bounded by these max numbers. So let's get those numbers into min rand will be 0, and max rand, let's make that 10. So there we've got our constants. Now, let's try just sort of a brute force method, and that is let's put it in a for loop. I equals I less than size will go all the way up to 10. And here, let's just, for right now, let's just try and output them. And once we output them, then we can go to the step of saving the output in an array. So just while we're in testing mode here, let's just see if we can get these numbers spit out. So don't even worry about an array for now, not at all. Let's just try and get these numbers here. So while we can do some trial and error, we could try to just put an if statement in there. And then I'm going to create a quick function to generate the random number for us, so we don't have to keep creating and typing in that full random number string each time. So I'm going to call it RNDO. And then here's the formula. There we go. So we'll just do RNDO. And here, let's check if it's even. So if that number is even, then we can output it. Open, we can't quite do that because we'll need to store this RNDO in a variable because we need to count it. So let's do this real quick, and temp. And then here we'll say if temp is even, then we'll count temp. And then let's just run this and see if we get 10 elements. And no, there we got 5, which is sort of the expected value. 6, 5, 6, 4, those are the common expected values for this. So this isn't working. Another thing that we could try is we could just take advantage of the property that if you have an odd number, just add 1 to make it even. So let's try that. So we'll still generate the random number here. And then if that number is odd, then we're going to add 1 to it. And let's see then how this does. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, all right, this works. Here we have 10 numbers output, and they all look even. And I'm just going to change the output format here real quick. Excuse me. All right, and there now the numbers just going straight across. Yep, and there's 10 even. So here's the problem with that algorithm, where if something is this number and we need it to be a different parity, the problem with the algorithm of just either adding or subtracting 1, it falls apart with some bounds. Let's say though that we didn't want even numbers. Let's say we wanted odd numbers. Okay, so well, now let's change this. And now we're going to say that if there's an even number generated, well, then we will increment it. And here's the problem. We have an 11 in here now when the max is 0 to 10. So we can't rely on the approach that we just did, because we run into the very realistic probability that we will have an out of bounds condition. And that is where we're strictly limiting our numbers to this, and suddenly we get one that's out of bounds over here. So we can't rely on that method. So we've got to figure out something else. Well, let me show you the best way to do it. And let's just think about it. And let's not even put it in a loop yet. Let's think about what code could we use to generate one even random number, guaranteed even. And then again, remember, we can't use any math. You know, you can take any number and multiply it by 2, and then it's even. But now that number is out of the range of our accepted random numbers. So here's what we'll do. We need to fill this slot. Let's just keep generating a random number. Like, it's almost like a ping pong ball machine coming out, and we're just waiting for one that's got an even number. Oh, here it is right there. Well, we'll do a while loop to just keep generating random numbers until one finally is even. And once we have that even number, boom, then we'll add it to our output. And then later we will add it to our array. So that'll be our strategy. So let's figure this out here. Let's say temp is rando. Okay, and then we want this to be even. So if it's odd, we can just say, okay, then while temp is odd, so while it's odd, we're going to generate another random number and store it in temp. And then it's going to look at that new number. While this is odd, generate a new one, and that's going to keep going until we finally get one that is even. So let's look at some code here to do it. Okay, this time we didn't have to worry about it because our random number was a 6 initially. Here's a 5. And what happened was that the number was in fact odd. So we generated more and more random numbers until we finally ended up with 2. Let's show this process a little bit better by putting a count statement inside the while loop. So this will be inside the while loop. And then our final one will be here. And then let's do initial up here. And this will show how those numbers change as we go through. All right, so here, look at this. It initially was a 3. So then we went back to the drawing board and generated a 9. And then we went back to the drawing board and finally generated a 0, which is even. So we ended up with that 0. Let's see if we can have another one of these long strings, maybe with a, oh, there's a good one. We started with 5, generated another number. It happened to be odd, generated a 3, odd, another 3, odd, a 4, even, and then that's what we ended up with. So this while loop is the secret to success here. Now I'm going to kind of clean up this code now that we have got kind of the evidence that this is working. And now this current code right here in lines 14 to 16, that's going to generate one random number that complies. So let's do what we do. We needed 10 of these. So let's wrap this up in a for loop. Okay, so here's the top of the for loop header. Oops, let's not go out that far. And then down here, we put the bottom of the for loop header. So again, just where I just did that, right here, I took this existing code, wrapped it in the for loop, that line and that line. And now what we're going to do is indent the entire thing one tab stop. So just highlight it, press tab once, and that moves that whole code block as one unit, moves it one tab. So here, let's change the output and just print out temp. And then we'll count an end line here. And then let's see what the code now actually does generate for us. Hey, and look at that. We've got 10 evens. Let's try it again and again and again. So our code is working. So let's review how it's working. And let's remember that it starts with the while loop in the middle. That while loop's going to keep going until we've got an even number. And then we're done. But we wanted 10 of them, so we just wrapped that up into a for loop. Now we need to do one extra step, and that is to assign these to an array. So let's get that part coded in now. We will do this. We'll create an integer array called even rands. It's going to be of size 10. There is our constant, so we'll go ahead and use that here. Same thing that we use right here in our for loop. And then I'll go ahead and just, as being a good steward of our data, let's initialize those to all zeros. And then here, in addition to, actually, no, instead of counting it, here is where, well, let's go ahead and add it to the even rands array. So we'll say then even rands sub I is temp. You say that again, we've got by the end of line 18, temp is guaranteed to be even. So we're just ready to assign it right into the array. So the current index is I, and that's going to be fine for us because we're going from 0 to size, and then we'll just do that assignment. Now then here at the end of the code, just for validation, let's output the contents of the array to prove to ourselves that it worked. So let's do that. And here I'm using the range-based for loop. You can read about that in section 7.4. And it's a quick way to output the elements of an array when the index is unimportant. And in this case, it's unimportant. We just want the data. We don't need any index numbers output. And there it is. There's our illustrious array being output there. All right, so I hope this helped, and I'll post this code in this same page, and please fork it. You can follow along with me, run it again, whatever you need to do, and then pop questions up in the discussion board. All right, thanks everybody.